Oh, there you are, YouTube. I'm seeing all sorts of talk and questions regarding whether or not Hamilton, the Hamilton that played on Disney Plus, the Hamilton that was scheduled to play in theaters, whether or not it is eligible for Oscars for 2020 films. There's a lot of back and forth chatter on this, some saying no, absolutely not, and citing the Academy's own rulebook when saying that. But I think they are interpreting some of the language incorrectly. Perhaps I'm doing that, but I don't believe so. And I'd like to show you why I think Hamilton is eligible to be nominated for Oscars. And as of right now, as of filming this video on July 7th, the Academy has not given any official statement on whether or not Hamilton is eligible for Oscar consideration or not. Now, the Academy rulebook is elastic. It does change from year to year, and there have been extra changes made this year due to COVID-19. And none of those changes hurt Hamilton's chances at getting nominated for Oscars. In fact, I think they help. Now, here's an image of the Academy rulebook. This is the book that I'll be referring to for the remainder of this video. Now, you can find this rulebook on OSCARS.org under the Rules and Eligibility section, and you can see this is the 93rd Academy Awards of Merit amended version of the rulebook, and it was amended on June 15th, 2020, and this is what has the updated rules due to COVID-19. Now, Hamilton would most likely be submitted as a documentary, a feature-length documentary, and I'm going to refer back to the rulebook as to why I believe that's how it would be submitted. The rulebook states that an eligible documentary film is defined as a theatrically released nonfiction motion picture dealing creatively with cultural, artistic, historical, social, scientific, economic, or other subjects. It may be photographed in actual occurrence or may employ partial reenactment, stock footage, stills, animation, stop motion, or other techniques, as long as the emphasis is on fact and not on fiction. So Hamilton, the documentary, as we're going to call it, because it's very much like a filmed concert. Those have been nominated for documentaries. This is a filmed event, a filmed play. You could say that it falls under the subject of history or culture because of the content of the play, but remember, we're looking at this as a movie, as a documentary, so the content would almost more fall under artistic subject matter because we are watching a play. This is documentation of a play. Sure, the play is about history, sort of an artistic interpretation of history, but what we're watching, the movie we're watching a play, a documentary of a play, not a documentary of history or of culture necessarily. In some ways, I guess, yes, definitely. But I think what subject this would fall more under is under artistic subject matter, a documentary on a specific play. Now, in the upper right-hand portion of this section of the rulebook, you'll see that a documentary feature must have a running time of more than 40 minutes, and this definitely has that. Hamilton is like 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes, something like that. Now, below that, under the eligibility section of documentary feature, it states that the documentary must have a theatrical release for 7 consecutive days in Los Angeles and New York. There are those words, theatrical release, again. I read them when reading the definition of an eligible documentary film. Hamilton didn't get a theatrical release. It did have one planned, but it didn't get it due to COVID-19 shutting down all movie theaters. It was unable to be shown on the big screen. Instead, it was released on Disney Plus on July 3rd, and that works in its favor. Other movies that had 2020 release plans, many of them push the release date a year or two down the road, making them ineligible for Best Picture, Best whatever of 2020 at the Oscars. But because Hamilton was released on a streaming service, released on Disney Plus, rather than pushing the date back to another year, I think that helped its chances at being eligible for the Oscars, and I'll show you why. Under special rules for the documentary awards, you'll read, the unprecedented coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic mandated the closure of all Los Angeles County movie theaters as of Monday, March 16, 2020. Until further notice and for the 93rd awards year only, Films that had previously planned theatrical release but are initially made available through commercial streaming, video on demand service, or other broadcast may qualify for awards consideration in the documentary categories for the 93rd Academy Awards. Quick change of scenery. Basically, my kids woke up from their nap, they took over the day, and now it's evening, and it's night now, and I was filming this during the day, so that's what all this is about. But that previous image basically says even though Hamilton ended up being released on Disney Plus prior to being shown in theaters, it still qualifies because it had a theatrical release planned. But none of those reasons are really what people are getting hung up on when they're looking at the rule book. This is what people are getting hung up on. Right here where it says works that are essentially promotional or instructional are not eligible, nor are works that are essentially unfiltered records of performances. People are saying this is just a recording of a performance. But there's an important word in that sentence that people are ignoring. And that word is unfiltered, right there between essentially and records. And I believe it is that word that makes Hamilton eligible for Oscar consideration. And I think that word changes the game because unfiltered to me in this situation means void of almost all cinematic language. To me, unfiltered would be had they just positioned a camera in a seat and had it play as if it was the point of view of one spectator from the audience. But that's not what we have here. We have cuts, we have edits, we have close-ups, we have medium shots, we have long shots, and I'm pretty sure, it's been a while since I've seen it, a couple days, but I believe there are camera movements as well. So there are real artistic decisions being made when creating this documentary. So with that, I'm saying it can definitely be submitted as a documentary. Now, the next question, can it be eligible for other awards outside of Best Documentary? And I guess that sort of grandfathers you into Best Picture as well. But yeah, other awards, acting, music, let's take a look. And under other rules, it says documentaries submitted in this category may also qualify for awards in other categories if they meet the specified requirements and submission deadlines. So we need to find out what those other specified requirements are. Let's do some more digging. Let's take a look at songs. Rules for original song. An original song consists of words and music, both of which are original and written specifically for the motion picture. The songs in Hamilton don't count. Those are written for the play. This is the documentary. But you may say, well, the songs in the credits, but those were written for the mixtape that was put out in 2016, right? 2016? It's 2020 now. So that had its own purpose. We're looking at the documentary's purpose, and no original music was written for it, that I can find anyway. So the songs in the Hamilton documentary come from the play and the Hamilton mixtape. Therefore, they are not eligible for Oscars. But what about acting nominations? Do those count? Are they eligible? Let's take a look. Here are some acting nomination rules. A performance by an actor or actress in any role shall be eligible for nomination either for the leading role or supporting role categories. If, however, all the dialogue has been dubbed by another actor, the performance shall not be eligible for awards consideration. Singing that is dubbed will not affect the performer's eligibility unless it constitutes the entire performance. No dubbed dialogue, no dubbed singing, as far as I know anyway. It doesn't seem that way. It doesn't make any sense for that to be the case. So we're good there, but is this a performance? Is this a role? We're watching documentation, in my opinion, of somebody acting in a part. We're watching the acting. We're not watching a character. We're watching the acting in this sense. As looking at Hamilton as a documentary, we're looking at Lin-Manuel Miranda act as Hamilton. We're not watching Hamilton. Where if we were sitting there in the auditorium, not the cinema, but like the theater, that kind of theater, we're sitting there as a spectator on Broadway, let me say that, and we're watching Hamilton. We're watching a character. But here, I think when looking at this as a documentary, I think we're looking at Lin-Manuel Miranda act as Hamilton, if that makes sense. I think we have to look at another word, though. Right here, where it says in any role, again, I think that's vague. Maybe you could count what we're looking at as seeing a character. It's almost like we're simultaneously seeing Lin-Manuel Miranda act, and we're also seeing the character. So I think there's some wiggle room here because it says in any role. And because there's wiggle room, I think we have to go to rule number 7, which states, the Actors Branch Executive Committee shall have the right and responsibility to resolve all questions of eligibility, rules, and designation of award recipients. And because of that wiggle room, I do think the Acting Branch Committee will be the ones to decide that, but it doesn't go without precedent. The 1975 movie Give 'Em Hell, Harry, which is a recording of the stage play Give 'Em Hell, Harry, received an acting nomination for James Whitmore. So it doesn't go without precedent. He was nominated for Best Actor, and since then I keep hearing that the rules were changed afterwards, but I'm not finding anywhere in the rule book that I've been looking at where that change is, what's saying this cannot be done. So I don't know. I think the acting branch is going to have to make that decision. But in the end, yes, I believe Hamilton is eligible for Oscars based on all of that evidence that I just provided. And that all comes from the rule book. It doesn't seem that gray to me when looking at that word unfiltered. And I keep seeing people cite Vulture for this article that they wrote where they say a source from the Academy says that as a recorded stage production, Hamilton is not eligible for awards consideration. But that's just like an Academy source. That could be anybody. That could be any member. That could be some nun in a convent somewhere. Dolores Hart. It could be... I think ultimately committees will settle this, but if you look at the rule book, I think it's open, at least in the documentary category. When it comes to acting, I think there's some gray area. But again, some of that language makes things, provides a little bit of wiggle room. I think some things are gray there. But yeah, those are my conclusions. If you have any of your own, or perhaps I missed something in the rule book that suggests it should not be nominated, please let me know down in the comments below. I think all of this is very interesting to follow. I know a lot of people really like the Hamilton production. I know the Oscars really want ratings, so it seems like if to them things are in a gray area, they maybe should tip them towards yes, it is eligible. Based on, again, everything that I found, it seems very clear to me through that word unfiltered that it is eligible at the very least for a documentary nomination. So again, if you have any other findings or opinions or anything like that regarding all of this, please let me know down in the comments, and yeah, I'm curious to see what you have to say about it. And maybe I'll see you tomorrow for more Pure Hangout.